Hello and welcome back to the Gemhawks YouTube channel. I hope you're having a lovely day today. Now for the third in our series of charm bracelet ideas, I'm going to show you how to create the last two charms from the charm bracelets we've been making. That's now nicely cured on the elastic. And we've also got the one on the beading material as well. So I'll show you now how to make the little heart and the small crescent moon. And I'll also show you a third way that you can attach these onto your chosen bracelet. So here are our first and second charm bracelets. We've got that stretchy one and we've got the one on the beading thread. So we're now going to learn how to make the heart and the crescent moon. And this time we're going to be working in a silver coloured wire. This is 1mm or 18 gauge wire, and I have approximately a 5-inch length. Just checking to see both ends have already been flush cut. I'm going to grab in my round nose pliers to start off creating that small spiral shape. Once I've got that small spiral going, I'm going to switch to my flat pliers, or my bent chain nose pliers if you prefer, just to create two circles around one another, and then I'm just going to gently ease that away from that spiral form. So we've got one pass of wire and a second pass of wire. You can of course make this much larger if you want to, but I'm thinking charms today. So we're going to come along less than ½ an inch and put an angle back, up and away, so it's slightly smaller than 90 degrees, but then I'm just going to open it out to about 90 degrees. So make sure you can see that flashing in the light. And then I'm going to grab in my memory wire finishing pliers or my round nose pliers and just pop a little bit of an arc on the far side. Ideally, I'd like it to be about the same height as the spiral, so that looks a little bit low to me, which is absolutely fine. What we'll do now is just draw that wire around gently. So we have the second lobe of the heart, or the second half of the heart if you prefer, and you can see there's a bit of a gap between those two lobes. So I'm going to grip across that wire around about the same point as the centre of that spiral aperture, and then bring the wire back up through the middle. So you can see at the moment it's a bit of a jaunty angle, so what we're going to do is just bring that slightly closer together by very delicately pinching, just to close this up a little bit, and then when you grab that middle wire and just push it down, you'll be able to centralise the wire and get quite a nice little neat shape to represent that small heart. Now if you're working with copper or a solid precious metal, I would very much advise giving that a bit of a hammer now. Because I'm working with a plated metal for cost's sake, I'm just going to very gently work hard on it by opening and closing my pliers gently. If you choose to avoid getting tool marks, you could use some nylon jaw pliers to help you out. Now for today's video, I thought what we would do is add our charms to small lobster or parrot clasps. So if I grab hold of that upright wire, push that away to one side, bring back in my little memory wire finishing pliers and create a small loop at the top there, bring that all the way around. So we're going to create another wrapped loop, but this time instead of using a charm carrier or jewellery tag or tab, we're just going to open that loop up slightly and drop in our chosen clasp. So I'm going to just use this silver plated lobster clasp. Gripping gently across the centre of that round form, I'm then going to bring the wire around to fill in a couple of turns on that upright wire. Now you can obviously go a lot slower, make that a little bit neater. You could even go for one more turn on that central core if you want to. So I'll give that a little bit of a wiggle just to get that to sit down into position. And then tighten that small spiral of wire on that central core. So if we flip this over to the rear, you can see we didn't need all of the wire. I've gone for quite a small heart. So trim away the excess, save that for little spirals for later. And then just ensure that your spiral is tight and that the end sits down on that core. What we're going to do for today's charm bracelet is just add that onto the chain that I'm going to purpose into the bracelet design. So if I just open up that clasp, count a gap of 4 links, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then in the 5th link I'm going to add in my charm. So they're kind of cute, they're really fast to make, and they don't take a lot of wire. Precious metal charms are commonly attached permanently to a charm bracelet, so they'd be popped on with a jump ring and then that would be soldered shut, which is lovely. One of the reasons I like to make these with inexpensive charm materials such as silver plated chain and silver plated wire is because it's a lot of fun. It doesn't actually have to cost a lot to be something that's fun and functional. So let's head back down to the board and we'll make our last charm for today. For the crescent moon design, I'm again working with 1mm or 18 gauge, and this is a 6-inch length of that silver colour. It's quite a firm, springy wire. What we're going to do is to form a right angle about 2 inches from one end, like so. And then we're going to create the first horn of the moon. So what you can do is just gently bend that around if you like, although you can do this afterwards if it's easier for you. And then bring that very firmly back towards the centre of your design. Now I quite like to have a slender feel to the end of these horns of the moon. And to make it easier to get a nice rounded form on the inside, I tend to use a tool. You can use any round form you have available. I'm going to try for number 3 or number 4 on my bail makers and see what that looks like. So let's just gently curve that around and see if that's too small. Let's have a look. That actually doesn't feel too bad, but I think I might go just slightly larger with this one. So pop number 4 in and bring that wire all the way around again. So if it doesn't sit quite right, give it a wiggle and you'll be able to get that to move into position. So I'm going to bring the next horn, the lower horn of that crescent moon, slightly further out. Just because I like the idea of that little moon leaning backwards as if it's taking a bit of a rest in the night sky. So let's try and keep this nice and straight. You can, of course, hammer this crescent moon shape. Let's grip hold of that lower horn and then just use our thumb to gently curve that wire around to generate the outside of the moon. You can make it as chubby or as narrow as you like. You will have the opportunity just to refine the shape of the ends just like so. The lower and upper horns of that crescent moon, and then you can bring that into shape into whatever kind of size and shape you desire. If it goes a little bit awry, don't worry, it's only wire. You can make it do something different, or you can start again. This is why practicing with a plated wire, and believe you me, this wire in particular was very cheap. So I'm quite happy with how that is coming together. What I'm going to do is to grip across the wire like so. So I'm gripping the curved section. I'm not gripping where that angle change occurs. And I'm going to push that wire backwards and all the way around. So if I show you from above, it's created a little bit of a hook shape. What we're going to do now is just to push that down to make sure it stays as close as possible to the angle change that we first made. I'm going to grip across all of those pieces of wire, both the upper horn and the outside arc. I'm going to draw the tail of wire around a couple of times just to tie that neatly into position. Now for some reason I quite fancy having the moon facing that way. You can face it whichever way makes you happy and if it has some special significance to you. So again, I'm going to trim away the excess of wire at the back there, and we didn't need quite all of that wire. What we do need to do though is to make sure that that end sits snugly against the central core. Now if you wanted to, you can absolutely add a bead in on the neck of each of these designs before you add into your chosen attachment. Now something I did just want to show you before I wrap this together is that you can also use small split rings. So these don't quite go round twice, but they are a very hard material and they will be slightly less bulky, but you can still take them on and off of your chain. Now I'm not going to show you the wrapped loop again, it's exactly the same procedure. All we would need to do is grip across that core wire, turn the wire out to the side, and then pop a little wrapped loop up at the top to encompass our small clasp. So one of the reasons I like working with chain charm bracelets is because that is now completely adjustable, and that amount of chain cost literally pence. Not very much at all. So it's a great idea just to use up scrap pieces of wire. You can use those split rings if you prefer rather than the lobster clasps. It will bring the cost down even further, and it will still leave you with the opportunity of moving things around, changing out charms for your daily requirements. Have a beautiful day, and thanks so much for joining me here at the Gem Hawks YouTube channel. Bye for now.